Hello and welcome back to the MMA Bar. Today, we're going to discuss Fedor Emelianenko, the man, the myth, the legend. We discuss his MMA career, fight highlights, big achievements, and his personal life. Fedor Emelianenko is a Russian heavyweight mixed martial artist, sambist, and judoka, currently competing for Rizin Fighting Federation and Bellator MMA. He has won championships and accolades in multiple sports, most notably in MMA, sambo, and judo. But first, let's touch on the early life of the legend. Fedor was born on September 28, 1976 in the small city of Rizin in what is now Ukraine. 2 years later, his family would move to Russia, the country he'd come to represent throughout his life. Fedor didn't come from a combat sports background. He'd take up sambo as a preteen, but he wasn't very good at it. That would change, however, as he worked on his craft. He'd practice wrestling, sambo, and judo throughout high school. He'd graduate in 1991 and he became an electrician in the next 4 years. Fedor then served in the military as a firefighter for 2 years. Fedor continued enhancing his self-defense. He picked up the Master of Sports honor in both judo and sambo. This led to him joining the Russian sambo team. Fedor won the domestic championships for judo in 1997 and 1998. He came in third in 2 national sambo championships. He would quit the national team as he wanted to make money in his pro career. Fedor continued an acclaimed amateur career on the side. Despite his MMA success, he'd win 2 sambo world titles in 2002. He won the tournaments in 2005 and 2007 as well, and 6 national ones from 2002 to 2012. Nicknamed the Last Emperor and Cyborg, Fedor is a figure of controversy among fans, and most consider him to be the greatest heavyweight MMA fighter ever. At 6 feet and 233 pounds, he is small by modern heavyweight standards. With slightly flabby physique, he looks as if he could cut weight to make 205. Yet he demolishes larger opponents with incredible power and skill. The man seems to have an iron will and freakish mental discipline. The name Fedor is always in the infamous pound-for-pound mix with the likes of Anderson Silva, Miguel Torres, and George St. Pierre. Apart from more than a dozen sambo championship wins, he's also a former Pride FC World Heavyweight Champion. From mid-2000, when the Russian first competed as a pro, through the end of 2009, Emelianenko fought 32 times and lost only once, by a dubious doctor's stoppage. During one stretch, mostly in the vaunted Pride Fighting Championships, he was unbeaten in 28 bouts while taking on many of the best heavyweights of the day. This era saw him conquer some of the most dangerous men on planet Earth. He had victories against some of the biggest names in heavyweight MMA history. Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira, who he defeated twice. Some of the names on his resume included Ricardo Arona, Renato Sobral, Sammy Schild, Keith Haring, Frank Mir, Cale Sonnen, Kenton Jackson, Kazuyuki Fujita, Mark Coleman, who he defeated twice, Kevin Randleman, Mirko Cro Cop Filipovic, Mark Hunt, Tim Sylvia, and Andrei Arlovsky. Emelianenko was one of the first to excel in all areas of mixed martial arts. Sure, fighters like Don Fry and Frank Shamrock showed a measure of skill in a wide range of techniques, but often they were just passable. Fedor was an elite fighter everywhere the fight might go. A judo champion who fell just short of representing Russia in international play, he had the throws and the submission holds. What he didn't learn in the judogi, he added on the sambo mats, embracing Russia's national grappling art. But this grappling wizardry was just a small part of what made Fedor great. His hands, it turns out, were made of stone. Like a 240-pound Roberto Duran, he swung often and he swung heavy. Fearless, Fedor cut off the ring with his patented looping punches, often designed specially to leave his opponent right in his clinch, where Fedor's trips and throws were truly deadly. And once he had you on the ground, well, that's when the real big guns came out. the most punishing ground and pound the sport had ever seen. What was truly magical about Fedor's various techniques wasn't just that they existed. It was how easily he combined them to create an inescapable, impenetrable cone of violence. Fedor made his pro debut for Fight Network rings in 2000. He won 4 of his first 5 matches, 3 of them via stoppage. His loss was a controversial one to Tsuyoshi Kosaka. The official had let Kosaka get away with an illegal elbow strike that cut open Fedor. He lost via doctor stoppage, and the rest is history. He then won 6 fights in a row to enter Pride FC. His first task was to face the 6'11" monster Semi Schilt. Fedor dominated him despite the physical disadvantage for a unanimous decision win. He then squared up against future UFC fighter Heath Herring. Fedor dismantled Herring in the first round for a TKO. His next match was against Pride heavyweight champion and future interim UFC champ Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira. This was Fedor's biggest challenge till then, and Nogueira was a heavy favorite. His submission skills superseded everyone else's. But Big Nog couldn't match him and got pummeled for 3 rounds. Fedor became the Pride World Champion and quickly defended his title 4 times. His next bout was against MMA pioneer Mark Coleman. Coleman was the inaugural UFC heavyweight champion. Fedor submitted him in 2 minutes. He then faced another former UFC champion in Kevin Randleman. This was a more competitive fight, and Fedor even got slammed on his head. But he got up and submitted Randleman to retain his title in less than 2 minutes. After submitting judo legend Naoya Ogawa in about a minute, he faced Nogueira again. A great fight ended as a no contest because of a cut on Fedor's head. Later in the year, the two faced off for the 3rd time. Fedor dominated Big Nog like their first fight. He won the 2004 Heavyweight Grand Prix as a result. He later faced another Pride big shot in Mirko Cro Cop. The highly anticipated and competitive fight saw Fedor break his nose but still win a UD. Soon after, he faced knockout artist Mark Hunt. Hunt tried his best but was submitted in the first round. He faced Matt Lindland and submitted him in 3 minutes despite a cut above his eye. He then ditched the UFC to sign with M1 Global. He beat kickboxer Choi Hongman via an armbar in his first fight. Fighting for affliction, he then faced Tim Sylvia, who had just left the UFC. Sylvia was a 2-time UFC heavyweight champion and one of the best heavyweights in MMA. Despite Sylvia's resume and size advantage, Fedor choked him out in almost half a minute. He then knocked out former UFC champion and the top-ranked Andrei Arlovsky. He once again rebuffed the UFC, this time for Strikeforce. He laid rest to Brett Rogers' undefeated record with punches. But his dominance was about to reach an inevitable end. A couple of months later, Fedor was scheduled to face former UFC fighter Fabricio Werdum. The fight was a quick one. Fedor got caught in a triangle armbar which forced him to tap. This was his 2nd ever loss in MMA and the first one in 10 years. Several months later, he faced Antonio Silva. Despite putting up a fight in the first round, Fedor was blinded by punches in the second. This caused a doctor stoppage loss for him. In his next fight, Fedor was knocked unconscious by legend Dan Henderson. Fedor kept on fighting and racked up numerous wins. He retired temporarily for 3 years. Fedor last competed for Bellator FC. His wins included prominent but aging fighters such as Frank Mir, Chael Sonnen, Timothy Johnson, and Rampage Jackson. Fedor also picked up 2 more losses against Matt Mitrione and Ryan Bader. Overall, he has a record of 40-60. Fedor was criticized for his lack of quality opponents from early 2007 into mid-2008 after Pride was bought by UFC. He only fought twice, once on April 7 against a blown-up Matt Lindland who usually fought at 185, and a freak show fight against 7-foot, 400-pound Korean kickboxer Hong Man Choi at the end of 2007. This was Choi's 2nd MMA fight. While neither fight can be considered fair to his opponents, Fedor fought who he could at the time. But critics neglect the obvious, which is that fighters have to deal with contracts to fight in any major organizations. UFC tried to get the notorious Russian warrior, but ultimately negotiations fell apart mainly due to UFC's adamant insistence that Fedor could not compete in his yearly sambo tournaments. So this in and of itself wasn't a surprise, as Fedor's people were used to dealing with Japanese promoters who do business a lot differently than Dana White. What was surprising was UFC champion at the time, Randy Couture, departing the UFC to pursue a fight with the man he deemed the best heavyweight in the world, Fedor. Without any doubt, Fedor is undeniably the greatest fighter to have never competed in the UFC. Some 21 years after his pro debut in Russia, the last emperor is still going at 45. UFC legends like Jose Aldo and Georges St. Pierre have each labeled Fedor as the greatest of all time, but the list doesn't end there. Both Chuck Norris and Mike Tyson have expressed their admiration for the incredible striker and submission specialist that is Fedor. Thank you for watching this video. That's all for now. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell.